up with a pig head behind him. Rig wakes up in his own bathroom, and in his bedroom finds a tape playing for him featuring Billy the Puppet, who shows him that Eric Matthews is still alive but standing on a block of ice that'll melt in 90 minutes. What's more, Detective Hoffman is there too, and his fate is linked to Eric's survival. All Rig has to do to save them is let go. And so it's set. We're going to be following Rig for the trap plot. Think of him as this movie's Jeff, only he doesn't move at a glacial pace. The first test he comes across involves a woman with a pig head mask on, handcuffed to a chair. Billy pops up like a tutorial character in a video game and tells Rig that it's not his job to save this lady.
Your obsession tells you to save the victim. I tell you to walk away. The choice is yours.
Rig may be faster than Jeff, but he's just as bad a listener, as he goes to save her anyway, and that results in a trap starting that yanks her hair back into its gears. He goes to cut her hair, but all his scissors and kitchen knives have been removed, so then he tries shooting the machine, but that just makes it angrier. The woman's scalp begins to tear off with a bunch of spurting blood, and things get pretty damn messy before Rig is able to find all the numbers he needs for the combination that finally frees her from the world's deadliest tension headache. He runs off to find something to help her with, but she goes for a hidden cubby knife and attacks him when he returns. He subdues her by grabbing her by her squishy scalp and throwing her straight into another scene. Whoa, Saw 4, what the fuck? This movie's got a ton of those crazy Saw transitions, but unfortunately I won't have the time to show you all of them, so go watch the movie. It's worth it for them alone. That scene is short and sweet, showing the feds finding out about gunshots reported from Rig's apartment. Back to Rig, who plays a tape that Scout Lady had in her hands. Her name is Brenda, and on the tape, Jigsaw tells her that if Rig successfully saves her, her job is to then kill him, because otherwise he'll put her in jail with all the picture evidence hanging up showing that she's an escort. But instead of trying to take her in or anything, Rig just goes to leave. On his way out, he finds a pair of keys in a box, one from a motel, alongside a note that says one key will save a life and the other will end one. He takes both for good measure and heads out to save Matthews and Hoffman. They're chilling in this green-lit warehouse. Matthews, with a kick-ass robo-boot over his fucked-up foot, and a flashback fills in the gaps for us on the Eric Matthews timeline. After his fight with Amanda, following the conclusion of Saw 2, he was dragged through the infamous tunnels and kept in prison for 6 months. Now he and Hoffman are skating on thin ice, because there's some other dude in the room with them, setting up a trap involving the door and sitting down behind a row of monitors to settle in for a long day of accomplice work. The police force gets to Rig's apartment, where they find Brenda dead, having bled out from all those mirror shark cuts she got when Rig threw her through time and space. That kind of jaw will really wreck your shit, man. Strom and Perez are concerned because the last thing Carrie told them before dying was that 2 detectives' lives may be in danger. And on the wall, Perez finds pictures of Matthews and Hoffman. There's also pictures of other people who are going to wind up in Jigsaw's traps. Perez figures that all this shit around Rig's apartment is just a setup to make Rig look like an accomplice.
Or a setup for his alibi. Everyone around him keeps dying. Where is he to tell us he's innocent of what the hell these photos are doing in his apartment?
Some more kind of steamrolls through the storyline, and it gets kind of confusing. But that's why I'm here, to clear things up for you. The feds here are still trying to figure out who could be the other Jigsaw accomplice. Right now, Strom is starting to suspect Rig, or maybe Jigsaw's dream lady, whose pictures are everywhere. Rig goes to a motel and enters the room he has a key to. There's a box on the bed in there, and inside is a complimentary pig head mask. There's also a tape player that tells Rig he's got to help the motel's desk clerk, pictured here, save himself. Well, careful, Rig, there are security cams everywhere, so you'd better hide your identity and pig up. He uses the clerk's dog to lure him upstairs and then holds him at gunpoint. He forces the clerk, Ivan, into a red-tinted room with photographic evidence of the dude's crime. He was a serial rapist, so yeah, looks like Jigsaw has some on-beat punishment in mind for him. Rig finds another tape player in the red room. Jesus, Jigsaw must have been single-handedly keeping Radio Shack afloat his last few years. One says that Rig must force Ivan into the position to save himself if he wants to get closer to saving Matthews. Just to make sure we all understand that Ivan is guilty, there's videotape evidence of his crime, so yeah, this guy sucks. Rig forces him into the shackles on the bed, and when he's all tucked in tight, Rig gives him the tools that a note says will save his life. Another tape tells Ivan that he's got to make a choice.
Your eyes, which have led you blindly astray, or your body, which has caused those around you endless suffering.
Rig leaves as the 60-second timer for Ivan begins. Somewhat surprisingly, Ivan jumps right in with the first handle and activates the trap to stab out one of his eyes. But before he can muster up the courage to blind himself completely, the timer runs out and he gets drawn and quartered. The torture trap just flinging his body parts all over the goddamn room. It's a brutal kill, but it's done in quick cuts that don't linger too long on the slaughter. I'm fine with that. It's still awesome. Outside the room, Rig's latest note tells him to become the teacher and go back to where it all began. A flashback shows him talking to a little girl who's been physically abused, but she's too afraid to tell on her father, this finger-wagging fucker. Rig is pissed about both the dad, Rex, and his wife, Morgan, who doesn't do anything to stop him, and ends up assaulting Rex himself. As Hoffman pulls him off, Rex yells that Rig just made the biggest mistake of his life. Hoping to find more clues, the feds question Jill Tuck, Jigsaw's dream lady from the end of Saw 3, who's revealed to be his ex-wife. Her photos were in Rig's apartment, and the motto of her drug clinic, Cherish Your Life, was found at Carrie's murder scene, but at the interrogation, Jill denies any involvement, and some flashbacks show us her and John's relationship. The first takes place did his best Clint Eastwood impression to stop him.
You don't want to do that. Fuck's your problem. You're my problem.
Another flashback shows John introducing Jill to his new workshop, which he's used to build a baby crib, and oh, cute little first edition Billy. Vintage. Strong tells her to get to the goddamn point. She does not.
Do you know anything about the Chinese zodiac?
Oh, Jill, no.
Yeah, right there with you, Strong. But the Zodiac was important to John Kramer, who carefully planned the birth of his baby around it. What? Baby? Yeah, son, check it out. In this flashback, Jill is 7 months pregnant, and she locks up the clinic at the end of the night. John is waiting for her outside in the car and gets propositioned by a little prostitute named Addison. Hey now. Yeah, go home to your nerve gas house. On Jay out, that Cecil dude asks to let him back in to grab his jacket, but when she unlocks the door, he holds her at knife point because he's looking for a fix. He's in such a hurry to get it that on the way out, he accidentally smashes the door into Jill's belly, crushing it and causing her to bleed out in a very unfortunate way. Oh boy, that is not good. Cecil takes off running and John sees it, then rushes into the clinic to find Jill on the ground. He takes her to the hospital, but the news isn't good. The unborn baby, who was going to be named Gideon, was lost to John and Jill, and it looks like that may have sparked a certain ideology in Mr. Kramer.
You can't help them. They have to help themselves.
Tragic backstory for how many motivations does this guy have? Was it cancer? Was it the car loss of his unborn? At this point, I think he was just looking for any excuse to start putting people into torture traps. Strong and Perez are pulled away from Bill Tuck's interrogation to investigate the scene of Ivan's murder. The pictures and words on the wall make Strong figure out that Jigsaw must be trying to recruit Rig. He wants Rig to see what he sees and feel what he feels, so Rig can take up the sanctimonious murder torch. The feds also think trap was constructed in the room piece by piece, so their number one suspect is a lawyer named Art Blank who had been renting out the room for the past 6 days. Back in the ice block warehouse, Matthews decides to defy his predicament by trying to kill himself, but with his weight removed from this jig scene, he nearly kills Hoffman by electrocution. The mystery man puts the D-dubs back on ice. And who is this wet bandit looking bastard? Why, it's the Speak No Evil dude from that opening track, and it's further revealed that this is Art Blank, the lawyer who was renting the motel room in which Ivan died. And Art Blank is also revealed to his lawyer, and turns out he was standing just off to the side when Rig assaulted Rex. He tried to get Rig in trouble for it, but Hoffman lied for him and said that Rex attacked him first. Looks like Art Blank came out on top at the end though, Hoffman. He tells the detectives that if they can just chill out, there shouldn't be any problems.
If this other guy passes his test, the three of us can go free.
Then he gives Matthews a choice of his own in the form of a gun and a single bullet. Rig heads back to the same school where he once tried to comfort Rex's abused daughter, and in a classroom he finds Rex and Morgan back to back against the post. Morgan wakes up to say she won, and a flashback shows what the hell she's talking about. The two of them had woken up like this, and a tape in Morgan's hand blamed her for being an abused housewife. That seems a little off. But Jigsaw frames this trap as empowerment and says that while these spikes are through non-vital locations in her body, they've been fatally arranging for Rex.
Remove the ties that bind will lead to death from your inactivity. The choice is yours.
And she chose to do it, dude. Without too much hesitation, she ripped out each spike, one by one, from both their bodies, leaving her husband Rex to bleed out to death right behind her. So, Morgan passed Jigsaw's test. Great, but will Rig pass his? He finds a picture of his wife and a note telling him to go home. Instead, he presses onward, pulling the fire alarm on his way out so people will come and rescue Morgan. The feds wind up there in no time, and we get a super random death when a trap goes off and impales the police photographer through the head with a spike. Not sure why that needed to happen, but sure, sophomore, have another death. Perez learns that Art Blank has represented all of the trap victims so far, Brenda, Ivan, and Rex, and was able to get them all off from serving time. Furthermore, he's also Jill Tuck's lawyer, and he and Jill co-own the very building they're in right now. Again, a lot of this is needlessly complicated, but you know what's entirely necessary? This little puppet seance that Strong and Perez walk in on. Haha, Billy, all you need's a bubble bath and you'll be living the dream, my friend. The tape around his neck is addressed to Perez, and it has some very quiet whispering going on. When she leans in for a closer listen, Billy's freaking face blows up and stabs Perez and hers with a whole bunch of puppet shards. Not cool, Billy. Perez gives Strong that carry key, the one she had left them before getting touched by an angel, and then she's wheeled this movie. Strong gets pissed and aggressively interrogates Jill with some questions we've all been wondering this whole series.
What's with the dog? What's with the tricycle?
Yeah, what's up with those? He says Art Blank is the accomplice they've been looking for and demands to know what happened between him and Jigsaw. So we get another flashback where Art Blank talks to John Kramer about their business deals together. But after the death of his unborn baby, John's not interested in business.
Get the fuck out of here.
Jill says that was the end of their marriage, and shortly after, John got his cancer diagnosis and had his whole car accident thing. The next time she saw him, Cecil was missing, and John had his pictures all over his workshop. A flashback within the flashback shows what happened to Cecil. First, John had to perfect that Jigsaw voice modulation, but as soon as that was done, he stalked Cecil through a year of the pig parade and kidnapped him with a proto-pig mask. Cecil woke up in John's first trap and received John's first sermon.
I'll tell you what I will do, though. I'll give you a tool to reclaim your life.
Hell, he even gets to hear the first time John used his catchphrase.
I want to play a game.
The aforementioned life-saving tool is a knife mask attached to the restraints binding Cecil's arms and legs. If he can press his face against the knives hard enough, the restraints will be released. Otherwise, he'll just sit there and bleed to death. Cecil gives it a go, but this is John's first trap, so it's all kinds of amateur, and it ends up just breaking apart. Cecil stands up and tries to attack John, but Kramer simply sidesteps him, and Cecil meets his end in a barbed wire crib, bleeding out to death from that and all those knife slashes to the face. We jump up one level to the Jill flashback, where she leaves him in disgust, and we see John is working on a glass box full of glass shards that'll come back in the next movie. Stay tuned. Strong realizes their unborn baby was named after John's first building, and he questions Jill about where it is. Maybe he should ask Rigg instead, since he's just arrived there and walks inside to find a note telling him to have patience is on his side.
What the fuck does that mean?
I don't know, man. Well, let's figure it out. You're to say Matthews, right? Well, he's still on that ice block, and as he loads the gun he was given, he notices a couple of other ice blocks high up above him near the ceiling, and they're attached via chain to the door to this room, which is final test on it.
Better hope he doesn't come through that door.
Yep, better hope Rigg doesn't come through that door, or Strom, since he's just arrived at the Gideon building too. He calls in for backup as he enters and finds a keychain with, wait, is that a picture of slow-ass motherfucking Jeff? Wait, hold up, is that slow-ass motherfucking Jeff himself? What are we even doing in this movie? Yo, this Jeff shit is from the end of Saw 3, and it looks like Strom was telling him during it. Elsewhere at Gideon Meatpacking, it's that Art was subject of the trap, since he's got a crazy contraption on his back. He says that he can only press the button to release him and the two detectives once the timer hits 0. But before that can happen, Rigg arrives at the final test door and prepares to run at it. A bunch of shit happens real fast right now, so pay attention. Matthew's sure to stop Rigg from entering. Rigg crashes through anyway, setting off the chain. Sees Art Blank rushing at him and shoots him in the chest, and the chain releases those giant ice blocks that swing down and crush Eric Matthews' head. Oh shit! Wow! And with Matthew's head, the jig seesaw teeters, and we hear electrical crackling. Back to Strom, who finds himself in the door locked behind at the end of Saw 3. The key that Carrie left him and Perez finally comes in handy when he uses it to open the freezer door and come face to face with Jeff. Jeff ends up getting shot by Strom a couple of times in the chest. That's the quick end to slow-ass motherfucking Jeff. He died as he lived, frustrated and not really understanding anything. Strom witnesses the carnage all around him. Lynn's lack of head, Amanda dead on the floor, too young, and the center Jigsaw with his throat open. Didn't this movie with this autopsy? Yeah, man, I'll explain in a minute. First, we've got to deal with Rigg and Art Blank, who's still alive after getting shot, at least for a minute, but when he reaches into his bag, Rigg shoots him straight through the head and kills him. Impressive shot, Rigg. That was one gnarly headshot. It turns out Blank was just going for a tape player, and on the tape that plays, Jigsaw chastises Rigg for not just waiting. He was supposed to let people save themselves, but instead, he resulting in the death of Eric Matthews, who the timer had gotten down, and because he failed his final test, he has to face the real Jigsaw apprentice, Detective Mark Hoffman. Flashbacks show that Hoffman was the one behind kidnapping Kit. His office work earlier was writing the note that she found at the end of some, the one that made her cry, and that the pighead behind him earlier was just sitting on the wall, waiting for him to use it to kidnap Rigg, and leaves the room with the classic Jigsaw finisher.
Game over.
And Daniel Rigg goes on the kill count, because even though he's still alive here, the last time we see him, he does for sure die. I know it seems a little cheap to not see a dead body, but trust me, Rigg is out of the game. For his final act, Hoffman goes to the room where Strom is, and without being seen, closes the door behind him and locks him inside before exiting the room. The movie ends with the autopsy scene, where the words Jigsaw says to Hoffman on the tape have now taken on new meaning. The Jigsaw apprentice himself, Hoffman, has yet to be tested, and he won't escape judgment just because Jigsaw's dead.
The games have just begun.
The story got pretty crazy in this one, but you know what stayed simple? The kills. Let's see how many there were and get to the numbers. Unless I'm not supposed to go out that way because this is a test to see if I can stay right here. That's right. I'm gonna go. 10 people died in Saw 4, the most of the series so far, but that number will get wrecked later on. The victims included 8 men and 2 women, thus a 4-to-1 ratio for the gender distribution, and with a runtime of 95 minutes, that comes out to a kill on average every 9.5 minutes. I'll give the Golden Chainsaw for coolest kill, Eric Matthews. It's an incredible visual, and it also helps put a punctuation on this part of the Saw saga. Dull Machete for lamest kill will go to Daniel Rigg for sure, since I wasn't positive he died until I saw his post-mortem memorial in Saw 5. The Platinum Punchy Sticks for coolest trap will go to the bedroom trap that tore Ivan to pieces. It was the most interesting trap of the movie, with a brutal price to pay in order to escape, and when the dude failed it, the consequences were spectacular. Body parts flying everywhere. Rusty Mousetrap for lamest trap would be the marriage pincushion between Rex and Morgan. It's not awful, it's just the least cool of the movie, and I still feel bad that Morgan had to go through it, even if her abuse had caused her to become complicit. For every untitled Saw sequel, I'm going to give out a personalized subtitle to help it stand out. Thus I give you Saw 4, race to an action. And that's it. Saw 4 came out in 2007, and despite mostly negative reviews, it did just fine at the box office, so the series kept on chugging. That means Saw 5 came out the very next year, which I'll be covering next week. Until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been The Kill Count. Hey, thanks a lot for watching today's Kill Count. I want to thank a couple of patrons like Richard Rowe and Celine Robles. We're now halfway done with the Saw franchise. How you guys feeling so far? You still with me? Again, my apologies that I haven't been able to do bonus kill counts that often. I just really need a break, man. I'm willing to tell you all to be good people. Go ahead, baby cat. What's up there? Movie footage used in the kill count is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Dead Meat makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Please support filmmakers and the art of filmmaking by watching Saw 5 in its entirety on home media or streaming services where available. Welcome to the Kill Count, where we tell the victims in all our favorite horror movies. I'm James A. Janice, and today we're looking at Saw 5, released in 2008. Saw 5 is the directorial debut of David Hackle, who's the production designer of the previous 3 Saw films. So, nice little promotion for that. With all your faves like Eric Matz and Daniel Rigg dead, Saw 5 leaves us with Detective Mark Hoffman, the undercover jigsaw apprentice, now trying to tidy up all the loose ends left over so he can live free and saw hard. How many kills will Hoffman rack up in his first solo flight as our killer? Let's find out and get to that. The movie begins on a dark and stormy night where this tatted up dude Seth Baxter wakes up chained to a workbench. Billy appears on a TV and is all puffin' pissed about the amount of time Seth served for killing someone.
You served 5 years on what should have been a life sentence for murder.
Then he explains Seth's present situation. There's a big blade above him that's about to be slowly lowered down. In 30 seconds, it'll start cutting into him, and in 60, it'll finish the job. The only way Seth can stop the blade is to hold his hands inside the vices beside him until they get crushed to a bloody pulp. The blade starts swinging, and it is instantly one of the scariest traps we've ever seen. Just the sound of this thing would make me poop my pants. Seth's underwear may or may not be soiled, but he is scared enough to follow the rules and put both his hands into those vices, crushing them like red pepper. After that excruciating experience is over, the vices let go, but the blade keeps on a-coming. As the blade cuts into Seth, he looks over to see the eye of someone watching him from behind a screen. His last words are of quiet indignation. The pendulum blade lowers all the way to kill him, and the clamps around his neck release to allow a final dramatic death gasp. That was a solid meal of gore for our opening kill of the movie. Better cleanse our palates with a title card. Since the Saw series is now a full-fledged TV show at this point, Saw 5 starts with what's essentially a previously on Saw, showing Strom getting locked inside that makeshift operating room by an unseen Detective Hoffman. He finds another way out, but in no time at all, he's getting ambushed by a pig head and knocked out with delicious drugs. He wakes up in a crazy cool shot that's kind of like the one from the beginning of Resident Evil, and it turns out he's had his head placed inside a glass box, the better to see his tears through. Attached to the box is a couple of jugs of water, but Strom's not at the water cooler to chat about the latest Game of Thrones. He's there to fucking drown. Those jugs start filling that box. He winds up looking like a haunted mansion ghost before he gets a genius and totally badass idea. He takes a pen from his pocket and gives himself a tracheotomy, stabbing a passage to his airway and allowing himself to breathe through this neck hole. Nice work, Strom. You just proved yourself worthy of being this movie's main character. The cavalry arrives at Gideon Meatpacking, and we finally get closure to Saw 3's cliffhanger ending about Jeff and Lynn's daughter Corbett, when we see Hoffman carrying her outside to safety. Hoffman tells another detective that nobody else made it, but don't speak too soon there, Mark.
We got a live one!
Yeah, Strom's survival straight up stole Hoffman's spotlight. Hoffman's face dissolves into a jigsaw magazine cover and not so subtle transition to a scene with John Kramer's ex-wife Jill Tuck. She's meeting with a lawyer who tells her that John bequeathed her a tape. In it, he tells Jill that there are certain rules to the 5th film of a horror franchise. Oh shit, sorry, wrong series. He actually tells her he's left her a box with stuff that's super important inside, and that she'll know what to do with it. When presented with the box, Jill takes a random key from around her neck and opens it, but get this shit, we don't see what's inside, and we literally won't until the next movie. Listen, Saw, I love the soap opera shit, but you can't just give half a hint of something and not revisit it until the sequel. That's not how movies work. The nondescript police force of the Saw series is celebrating that their supervillain is finally dead. Hoffman gets a nice juicy promotion, and the fallen officers of all these movies get their Sears portraits put on display, so everything worked out in the end, until Hoffman finds an envelope on his desk with a note inside alluding to his secret identity as Jigsaw Jr. This note shit is gonna get a little confusing later, but just remember that Hoffman found this note right now, with the pressure he got his promotion and Jigsaw's death and everything. Assuming the note came from Strom, Hoffman immediately sets out to take revenge, going to the evidence room and stealing Strom's cell phone. Then he's called to Agent Perez's old hospital room that the cleaning ladies must have missed on the last shift. Strom is pissed about Perez being gone, and in his new raspy voice, he pointedly asks Hoffman how he walked out of that building alive. Hoffman responds like a fourth grader.
How did you? On a gurney with a fucking hole in my throat.
Oh, he's got you there, Hoffman. After Hoffman leaves, a new character, Special Agent Erickson of the FBI, shows up to talk to Strom. He's easy to identify because he's got a Bluetooth in his ear. So thanks for that, writers. He's there to tell Strom that he's off the case, then leaves him in the hospital room looking like a sad divorced dad in his frumpy hospital bathroom. You know, this is all fine and great, but we needs us a trap plot. And Hoffman begins it by unveiling a real neat shoebox diorama and a rack of monitors showing a series of rooms. I'm glad Jigsaw and his apprentices never advanced beyond a third-grade science fair presentation style of their traps. The trap plot begins with 5 people waking up to find their necks ensnared by a cable that runs back with a very head-choppy style blade. What's great is that by this point in the series, even these randos knows who's behind their predicament.
Jigsaw.
This lady Britt points out that, wait a minute, Jigsaw's dead. But before they can make sense of anything, Billy appears on a TV to welcome them all to his playground. He tells them they've got shit for morals and are selfish as fuck. But today,
This singular way of thinking will be put to the test. Today, 5 will become one with a common goal of survival.
presently, they're all connected to chills around their necks. And they're gonna get a little bit top if they don't free themselves with keys across the room. But the cable connecting all of them only has enough slack for one person to reach a key box at a time. And they've only got 60 for them to get free, starting from whenever one of them goes for a key.
Your lifelong instincts will tell you to do one thing, but I implore you to do the opposite.
There's also a 15-minute timer connected to some nail bombs that'll go off and kill them if they're not out of the room by then. You know, just for extra motivation. What's great about this show that start fucking up immediately, these people won't know what connects them to each other, besides the death instigated by mysterious Charles and his cool
Game! Tweaker.
Malik makes a selfish run for a key and it sets off the timer. Charles uses his strength to stop Malik and then retrieve him. Then he steps back to give the cable some slack so these ladies Luba and Britt can take individual turns getting their own keys. But Malik and this Ashley chick can't seem to work together. And although Malik is able to retrieve his key and join the others' key, the timer runs out on Ashley and she's pulled back into the razor, giving her a cartoony decapitation. The effects on the corpse after the fact are just fine, the worst effects we've seen in the series so far. The door opens and they move on, but not before Britt collects all the keys in the
What are you doing? Being smart.
Complot time, where Strom is sneaking into work to collect some unapproved overtime. He looks up Hoffman's records and finds out that Seth Baxter, the dude killed by the pendulum blade in the beginning, had actually murdered his wife, who it turns out was Hoffman's sister, as the unevenly exposed funeral picture reveals. Crazy stuff. Let's just click through some more plot stuff here for good measure. Great, yeah, get a close-up on that plot stuff, sure. On his way out, Strom is stopped by Erickson, off by saying he's just collecting his things before taking time off, or, you know, gross stuff. Strom goes back to the scene of Seth Baxter's murder and inspects everything there, including the tortured glory hole. Glory hole? The flashback shows it was Hoffman's eye behind it in the opening kill, and that he cut out a fleshy jigsaw piece in an imitation of the real deal. As the detective on the case, Hoffman admitted that he knew the victim as the man who murdered his sister, but I guess that didn't raise any red flags at the time. In the present, Strom just kind of intuits this all on his own.
You killed him. Made it look like a jigsaw trap. I got you.
In the next room, the trap plot folks suss out their stories. That headless chick Ashley was a fire inspector, Luba is a corrupt city planner, Britt is a VP of a real estate company, and Malik is a trust fund drug addict. Charles already knew all of this. He's an investigative journalist. Billy honeydews his way into the story to tell them that the 4 safety chambers they see will protect them from this room's bomb when it goes off. There are only 3 keys hidden in the glass jars hanging above their heads. They've only got a minute, so Charles incapacitates Malik, citing survival of the fittest, and starts breaking these jars open like he's a gold star pinata busted champion. But after he takes a key from Malik's hand, he becomes the pinata himself.
Survival of the fittest, my ass!
Britt, Luba, and Malik are able to get inside the chambers right as the timer reaches 0, and Charles gets killed in the ensuing explosion. Consider it luck, Chuck. You probably quickest death in this entire franchise. And yet, it's still got some nice gore to it. Back to a cop plot flashback. After Hoffman investigated Seth Baxter's case, he found an envelope in his desk with a note found earlier in the movie. But remember, this is a flashback, meaning that this note came first chronologically. And while Hoffman suspects that Strom wrote the other note we saw him receive, this one must have been written by John Kramer, who's waiting for Hoffman in an elevator at his apartment building. We're witnessing the first time these two met, and as with many first-time Jigsaw meetups, it involves a needle in the neck and getting knocked the fuck out. Hoffman wakes up at Jigsaw's starter workshop that we saw in the last movie, and John says he knows all about Hoffman and his sister's murder. Since we see it in a flashback, I'll put it on the count. And yes, I should have done the same with Jeff and Lynn's son Dylan in Saw 3. My bad for not including it. Although John sympathizes with Hoffman's familial loss and his desire for justice, he can't condone what Hoffman did to Seth.
Johnny is distasteful.
It never ends with this guy. But he really truly believes his ideology, which is what makes Jigsaw so damn interesting.
There is a better, more efficient way.
Seems like he's willing to recruit Hoffman into his effort to crack down on recidivism, but only after he psychologically tortures, making him pull the trigger of a shotgun pointed at his head.
Fuck you.
He's all like, should I rehabilitate anyone? And then he introduces Hoffman as the man they call Jigsaw. Yeah, John, Hoffman was probably able to detect that one out by now. Hoffman's given a choice: arrest John and have the beans spilled on his Seth Baxter murder, or become a student of Jigsaw.
Or I could kill you right now, but you're not a true killer.
But you just said... Whatever. You know what happens in the end. Jigsaw gets Garth Hoffman's apprentice. In the present, Hoffman calls up Erickson and casts some shade on Strong, hinting in all sorts of ways that he could be the Jigsaw accomplice they've been looking for. Erickson grows more receptive to the propaganda when he finds the Jigsaw files missing from the office and figures out Strom must have stolen them. Meanwhile, Strom's just taking a waltz down Saw memory lane, checking out this still unclean scene of the first movie's razor wire saw trap, which was the trap that gave us our first ever on-screen saw. We see a flashback in which Paul gets attacked by a pair of pigheads. During a fight with Biker Pighead, Paul gets stabbed with a needle by Red Road Pighead, who is John Kramer rocking a bomb-ass bald head and a slick goatee. No wonder Hoffman's on board. This flashback is one of those where we watch old stuff played out more in depth, but it's done in a cool style, and like I said before, seeing the fuller picture of the storyline always feels kind of neat. Also, turns out that more Jigsaw Detective Taft closing in on him, so Jigsaw light on the scene and has Hoffman lead Taft to Gordon as a suspect. Further flashback to Hoffman helping John set up the nervous house party and complaining of Amanda's outsized role in that affair. Because remember, now we know that Hoffman was Jigsaw's apprentice before Amanda Young came on the scene. The remaining trap plot to their next room, where there's a scrub-it-up tub in the middle. Bath time Billy shows up to tell them that in order to open the 5 blocks of the door to the next room, the 5 circuits powering that must be closed by connecting the first to the bath water.
We'll bridge the gap. The choice is yours.
The 3-minute timer starts and Luba takes over the pinata wagging role by knocking Malik into the tub so she can attach the cables to him and get the hell out of there. But Britt has a different plan and kills Luba with a single stab to the neck. I was kind of surprised by how easily Luba died here, but I guess they needed her dead fast so Britt and Malik could easily prep her corpse for tubby time. They put her in the water and attach each of the 5 electrical cables to her body. The final attachment is an undercutting head stab, and with that, the door to the next room opens and the trap plot twosome escapes another round of nail bombs. Bluetooth Erickson gets a visit from Jill Tugg, last seen with her bequeathment box, and she tells him that she thinks Agent Strom is following her, raising his suspicions even further. But right now, all Strom's doing is continuing to visit old Saw sets and trigger more flashbacks. During the Saw 3 era, after Hoffman complained that Jay Man had too many chances, John was like, "Shut up and do my work, henchman Hoffman," and gave him a file folder with pictures of the Fatal 5, meaning John was behind this movie's trap plot. No big surprise. And apparently, Hoffman disappeared through that hidden wall door mere seconds before Lynn and Amanda rolled in to kick off the beat of Saw 3. Strom has a revelation.
We were all supposed to die.
And he's right. Hoffman had a plan that was supposed to kill off all these contingency characters and leave him the sole survivor and the hero of Generic City. And why that just makes Strom all sorts of displeased. He'd be even more pissed if he witnessed this fuckery going on, with Hoffman calling Erickson from Strom's cell phone and not talking when Erickson answers. Rude. When Erickson goes to call him back, Hoffman powers down Strom's cell to make it look extra shady. The simple plan works, and Erickson orders a locator on Strom's phone. Hoffman returns to Trap Plot Central and plants Strom's cell phone at the console. So when the locator finally, locates it, it's that torture headquarters that Erickson rushes off to. The Trap Plot folk are in a room with a contraption that don't need no Billy tutorial. There's a beaker and some buzzsaws, and they'll have to fill the beaker with blood to open the next door. At first, they assume they'll have to fight to the death to see who lives, but then they realize they could have all survived these traps by working together. Yeah, no shit, you idiots, but just in case you, the viewer, wants to know how they were supposed to pass each room specifically, here you go. Britt sees that the keys from the first room were all the same, meaning after one person retrieved their key, they all could have used the same key to free themselves. The bathroom trap would have worked with all of them getting a survivable shock instead of one person frying like Luba did. And in that second room, those safety chambers could have fit more than one person, which I thought was pretty damn obvious, but I guess the whole thing with these characters is that their instincts are selfish. So it makes sense that they missed it. They're not good people. Billy pops up to confirm everything they've already figured out. While prepping for the joint blood sacrifice, Malik reveals that he's probably there because he accidentally killed 8 people when he burned down a building in exchange for some heroin. He didn't know that those people were in the building when he burned it down, but apparently Britt did. Turns out she set that plan in motion by paying a drug dealer to hire Malik for the arson, since she needed the land for real estate stuff. The others, Fire Inspector Ashley, Reporter Charles, and City Planner Luba, had all helped cover it up somehow, keeping everyone out of jail. You're a monster!
So are you.
We both deserve to be here.
Aw, torture traps, bringing people together since first time they've been successful in that regard. As Hoffman arrives at what looks to be his home, and Strom is right there behind him. Strom just walks right through the door to stalk Hoffman through the house. And, hey, is it just me, or does this place look kind of familiar? Like that trap door in the ground and those tunnels? Yep, turns out this is the nerve gas house. And apparently Hoffman remodeled it to be a home. It's kind of far-fetched, I know. But look, while Strom's looking around the infamous tunnels, he even scored in the shit room. He doesn't opt to enter it, instead pressing on to find a room with that glass coffin we saw John making in a flashback in Saw 4. Inside is a tape player, and when Strom plays it, he hears Hoffman's voice instead of John Kramer's. It tells him good job on the detective work, but lay the fuck off now, man. It also says the only way safely out of this room is inside that box full of glass shards. But Hoffman himself is lurking just outside that room, and when he makes a noise, Strom stops the tape to hear what's up. Meanwhile, Malik and Britt stand side by side as they prepare to sacrifice any future handlers. In the goriest scene of the movie, their hands are buzzsawed apart to fill the beaker with blood. It's a pretty intense scene, but at least they have each other to lean on as they make their sacrifice. When the beaker has its fill, the door unlocks, so it looks like Britt and Malik have made it. Yeah, I love a real happy, feel-good ending. Later, Erickson arrives at the building, having followed the phone tracker, and when he walks into the tool trap command center, he finds Britt barely alive on the ground. She boostfully tells him that they won, and he calls for immediate medical assistance. So yeah, she and Malik actually succeeded and survived. While waiting for the medics to arrive, Erickson takes a look around and finds Hoffman's planted evidence setting up Strom, including his cell phone on the table and the files Strom took from the station. Erickson also finds a folder with some headshots of Matt Walsh in it. Oh shit, no, those are pictures of Erickson. So now he thinks that Strom was targeting him next. He calls in an APB on Strom, meaning Hoffman's gambit has succeeded. Speaking of Hoffman, he enters the room with the glass coffin, find it empty, and he didn't follow the instructions on his head. Strom attacks Hoffman from behind, and after a short bout, knocks him into the glass coffin and closes the lid, locking him inside.
I got you.
Oh, but did you, Strom? The door slams shut behind him, locking him in this room. Hoffman, though trapped in the glass coffin, is looking pretty smug. The reason is revealed when Strom listens to the rest of his tape. As the glass coffin begins to descend, the tape explains that Strom should have stopped pressing forward, but since he didn't, now everyone's gonna think he was the jigsaw apprentice, leaving Hoffman the hero as originally planned. The glass coffin becomes a safe little lockbox when it finishes sinking into the ground, and Strom is left in a room that must be going on a crash diet, because it is getting small fast. The walls close in on him until he's nothing more than a red-tinted rainstorm falling against the glass lid of Hoffman's safety chamber, and that's the way the movie ends, with the defeat of Special Agent Strom. Hoffman's first big trap left 2 people living, but how many people did Saw 5 leave dead? Let's find out and get to the numbers. By flying. In a series low, tied with the first movie, only 6 people died in Saw 9. The victims consisted of 3 men and 3 women, giving us an even 50-50 split, and with a runtime of 95 minutes, we got a kill on average every 15.83 minutes. I'll give the golden chainsaw for coolest kill to Agent Strom, who really could have used the pair down all the garbage men at the tension level. The all machete for lamest kill will go to Ashley, because I hate how fake her goes. For shame, Saw 5. The platinum punchy sticks for coolest trap will go to the necktie trap, also known as the collars. I love the tension, pun intended, of each person having to give and take so they can all escape, and the reveal that one key would have freed them all is a way to illustrate how selfish these people's instincts were. Rusty mousetrap for lamest trap will go to the shotgun chair that Jigsaw put Hoffman in. What, his test was to be willing to pull the trigger on himself? Also, I don't know guns, but I've read that the way that cartridge is shown to have been loaded afterward, Hoffman should have actually had his head blown off. I'm giving every untitled Saw sequel a personalized to help us stand out. This week I do Saw 5, The Hoffman Coming. And that's it. 5 came out in 2008, and although it opened in second place thanks to High School Musical 3, it did make enough money to justify Saw 6, which I'll be covering next Friday, YouTube willing. Until then, I'm James H. Denise. This has been the Kill Count. Thanks a lot for watching this week's Kill Count. A couple of patrons like Macy O'Banion and Marisa Sanchez. I really appreciate all of you being understanding about all the stuff I'm facing with the Saw Kill Count. Sometimes I like about it, but it's just because this is my job and my life, and I'm so passionate about it. Feel free to keep me in check and be like, alright dude, we got it. Despite all the hard work, I've been having a blast making this series. Alright, y'all, be good people. Movie footage used in the Kill Count is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Deadbeat makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Please support filmmakers and filmmaking by watching Saw 6 in its entirety on home media or streaming services where available. Welcome to the Kill Count, where we tally up all our favorite horror movies. I'm James H. Denise, and today we're looking at Saw 6, released in 2009, and the directorial debut of Kevin Gruder, who was the editor for all of the first 5 Saw movies. I just love how much of a tight-knit family the Saw series crew is. Half of Saw 6 is stuff we've seen before. course, it's not even close to being subtle about it, but I'm actually kind of into it. Plus, this movie features one of the most popular saw traps of the series, and some seriously gory kills. Let's get to them. The movie begins with a saw trap. Co-workers Simone and Eddie wake up wearing some fancy headgear, and Billy pops up to tell them why they're there.
You recklessly loan people money knowing their financial limitations, cutting and repossessing more than they could ever pay back.
Holy crap, that was one fast response to the 2008 financial crisis Saw series. Nice work. Billy says only one of them is getting out. Escape is a very biblical one. Human fucking flesh. Whoever has donated more to Billy's flesh drive, timer runs out, gets to live, while the other will get one screwed up headache. Motivation. The game begins, and Eddie seems to have a bit of an advantage here. He cuts away that and throws it on the scale. Looks like he's the obvious horse to bet on, but I bet he didn't know Simone is being played by this role on the VH1 reality show Scream Queens. She ain't looking to lose this competition, so she grabs a cleaver and takes a shortcut to the finish line. She hacks off her arm for payoff, but it ends up worth it. She submits her arm for approval to the Jigsaw Society, and the scale tips her favor. Eddie is killed when the screws that is are driven into elation, all done in vain. Play to win or go home, I guess. Simone leans against the wall and screams out, "Sorry!" Not really, but you know we need to get to a tight car. The first thing we're treated to is a weird blurry shot of Cecil Lynn. Oh shit, Amanda Young driving down the road to get an old car, the Ford Taurus. You can tell by that oval dash for show that this episode's recap shows a strong step again to lead into the immediate aftermath. Hoffman getting out of his glass coffin and going to inspect the mangled corpse of what was once that dude from Gilmore Girls. Great work, Hoffman. I bet you're totally in the clear now. He's the scene of Eddie's murder, where a Bluetooth-less Ericsson shows him that they found fingerprints on the pilots and that have been identified as belonging to Agent Strong. But then he reveals something hidden from Agent Lindsay Prim, a pretty sweet video.
We're off of the subject. Now on everything new.
Get a couple of shots during the movie, but even a little more still helps make Generic City feel like more of a real place. So it works for me. She asks Hoffman for help getting access to Jill Tuck, and he says he'll see what he can do. Right now, though, he's talking to Simone and asking her if she's learned a navigate from her experience on program.
Look at my goddamn arm. What's supposed to from this, huh? Look at my arm.
At Umbrella Health, the name chosen from the nefarious fictional corporation's wiki, CEO William Easton is meeting with the company attorney Debbie since he's being sued by the family of Harold Abbott. In a flashback, we see that Harold Abbott is a dude who just wanted a little bit of that health insurance, but was denied due to a pre-existing. Harold Abbott died of his medical conditions. I wasn't shipping, so here you go. In the present, William credits the quote-unquote dog pit by Abbott's healthcare. But the dog pit is a crack team of 60 other bosses of the chance of a bigger bonus. Maybe stemming from his time denying medical coverage for that experimental ways include Secretary Addie, Bio Clerk Allen, and yes, obvious loud because they'll all come back later. Hoffman in the bed, partner for that. The usual Jigsaw MO is to use a more precise scale. Other times, rated blade had been used was for Seth Baxter.
The man killed your sister.
Does anyone else think the feds already know at this point? Because holy shit, they've thrown so much shade on Hoffman. He's gonna need a flashlight to see. Like when they say they're gonna decode the voice of Seth Baxter's tape to see if it's someone else's other than John Craig.
It's true.